Hello, dear friends. I hope you're all continuing to do well. I'm Mark Golub, so happy to be with you again in our series, Gam Yachad, Together During COVID-19. By the way, as you can tell, our programming schedule is always up in the air. We try to do this series and other things for you whenever we can. So please look at the JBS schedule if you can online. Go to our website, jbstv.org, and look at the schedule, and you'll see whatever changes are happening. Anyway, after weeks of terrifying news, there's a small ray of good news. The University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, which has been one of the foremost sources of modeling the way in which the coronavirus will ravage the globe, is now revising its predictions to suggest that the virus may actually peter out by the end of May. The model also suggests that the peak of deaths from the virus in the United States was yesterday, Monday. What's it all mean? Well, it doesn't mean we are now all safe and in the clear. But if the modeling is correct, it does mean that the rules that we've been following have been very effective. Social distancing, virtual quarantine, washing one's hands, keeping one's hands out of one's mouth, nose, and eyes, wiping down with disinfectant any package delivered to one's home or brought into one's home, and now wearing a mask and gloves if one must go out of the house. For those who have followed the rules, the effects seem to have been dramatically successful. Does this mean it's over? No. Does it mean we can relax our compliance with the rules? No. Does it mean that some people can begin to reemerge into society and that the economy can be slowly restarted in the near future? That may very well be possible. And we're seeing more tests being developed by labs, both for the virus or to see if someone has developed antibodies. And there are even whispers that a vaccine may be in the works, perhaps coming out of Israel, far sooner than was originally anticipated, far less than the year and a half we've been hearing since the start of this pandemic. So it's not time to start rejoicing, not time to start doing the hurrah. But I'll say it again, there are some real rays of hope that should buoy our spirits. In the meantime, some aspects of life continue, and in Israel this means the political chaos surrounding the attempts to create a new government, a new coalition government. And to bring us up to date on the political machinations in Israel, and to give us a sense of how Israel is coping with the coronavirus, I had another conversation today with JBS's Senior Vice President and the former media consul for the Israeli consulate in New York City, Shahar Azani. Here's my conversation with Shahar. Shahar, it is so good to see you. How have you been doing?
I'm great, and it's great to see you and be with our wonderful JBS viewers today.
So, Shahar, are you in any way going stir crazy, or are you all right? Are you able to get out at all?
You know, for us as human beings, it's all about adjustment. And I have to tell you, Mark, I look out the window, I feel great. I look at the weather that's getting better at any given moment. I look at my family. I look at you and our JBS audience and viewers and the work that we do every day to be with people. And you can always find a way. It's only a question of how to navigate the energy. So sometimes when it's ordinary or regular, whatever that means, then you're able to use your energy in one way. But when we are in these constraints, it just presents another limitation, a temporary limitation. But the core essence of doing good and being good and making the most out of any situation. And we said something last week when we had Leila Seder. We said, we've been through Pharaoh. So what is this? Spend a few weeks at home with the family, engage with people in slightly different manner. And who knows, the thought came to my mind that out of this unbelievable situation, so much good will arise. People will keep their distance and allow each other some space, behave a bit better, maybe provide some more outreach to those who are in need, and be more attuned to everything around us. I see the potential for so much good.
I love the way you say it. And you referenced Passover. First of all, you were a big hit on the JBS Family Seder. I am so appreciative you made time for us, and your reading was great. Our discussion was great. Thank you. But what about your personal Seder? How did that go?
Well, I have to say, Mark, spectacular. Because every year what we do in the Seder, we're always guests or we're hosting, or this time we had the entire evening to give 1,000% attention to the family and to read every word of the Haggadah and to go through the kids and practice their Hebrew and go over. And I was so proud, those tough words that I have to tell you, Mark, would be difficult for Israeli kids to read.
Yeah.
And my kids were able to read it. And even though we've been out and about, it was amazing. I can't even begin to.
I'm so happy for you. They didn't go crazy at your long Seder?
Oh, absolutely not. First of all, they know they have to cope with their father. So I have my shenanigans. But at the same time, there was such a great feeling of being together in this and getting to know each other even better. Usually the house is like this big hallway, right? We come out of work, come in, come out, school, shopping. And no, this time it's us. And here we are. And, even my daughter, Danielle, said, that I don't remember us doing it like this. I said, exactly. Think about it. When was the last time it was just us on Passover? And to be honest, it was a great gift in spite of all of the difficulties. Make no mistake, we did the occasional Zoom with friends and family.
Yes.
We flew out to Israel on the morning of, but we dressed up and we were ready to go nowhere.
That is so wonderful. One last thought on this. I'd love your reaction. Every now and then people talked about COVID-19 as if it were the 11th plague. And I went on JBS and I explained why it's inappropriate to link COVID to the 10 plagues in Egypt. They had a different purpose. There was a moral purpose to them. They were limited. God brought them. God ended them, as the story goes. And COVID is a totally different experience. And for me, the analogy was not so much with, it's an 11th plague, but it was a form of enslavement. And that very often, slavery is something so foreign to us. It's so far in our past that we were slaves in Egypt. I understand it metaphorically, but most of us don't experience it existentially. And to know what it is to be a slave, for most Jews living today, it's not something we know. I'm not talking, by the way, about Natan Sharansky and all of the Jews who came out of the former Soviet Union. Right. But for those of us in America, most of us didn't know. But there is an analogy in the story, not to the plagues, but the Israelites were slaves. They were enslaved in Egypt. And their lives were horrible. And they were brutalized. And they were beaten. And they were murdered. And their dignity was stripped of them. And they were in some way isolated. that is what the pandemic is doing to us. In a sense, it is enslaving us. The analogy with the Passover story is we now understand what it is to be deprived and to be enslaved. And I wonder if any of that resonates with you.
First of all, it very much does, because I, like you, agree that to compare it to the 10 plagues and to add it on as if it's number 11, even though on the form of it might seem appealing, I think is inherently wrong. But more than that, let me take your thought one step further. What if the COVID-19 reminds us not only of current enslavement, but the things we have been enslaved by before COVID-19. COVID-19 takes us to a point where humanity as a whole, not the Jews, not just this, not just that, everyone has to take a pause, take a look around, take a long, deep thought of what our life is, what have we been enslaved by, what direction should we take, food-wise, fashion-wise, shopping-wise, our religion, our family. It takes us back on the path of appreciating all that is simple and fair and decent and basic. And basic has become from a word of, oh, it's just basic, to give me that basic. I yearn for that basic. And I think this is a great strength of not only enslaving us, but also in a sense releasing us from enslavement, showing a different path in the hope that once this moves on, we are able to live our lives better. So taking the time to do this is an incredible opportunity that we must all seize upon and make the most out of, so that we can live a better life. For even though these few weeks we pass through isolation, think about the gift of being able to live the rest of our lives with great enlightenment. And it comes at a great cost, like any gift given by God, or any plague, or any notion, or any experience we as human beings feel on earth. It comes at a cost. But out of destruction, great creation may come.
I love the way you say it. Thank you. All right, let's go to what's going on in Israel. We want an update from you. First of all, what can you tell us about how Israel is dealing with COVID-19?
Well, the situation in Israel continues to be not easy, because the strict measures taken by the government, by the way, much stricter than here. Today, we are about to celebrate the second holiday of Passover. And in the course of the second holiday of Passover, well, supposedly tomorrow night in Israel, there is supposed to be great celebrations where you can have chametz, and you can go to the bakeries and have your pita bread and your buns, and there are long lines. And in addition to that, the Moroccan traditional holiday of the Mimuna is celebrated all over Israel. And it's not just a humongous community celebration. The Jewish Moroccan community celebrates the end of Passover in this great, bake night, or when people come together to have honey with baked goods and drinks, and they invite people. The blessing is tirbahu and tisadu. Come on over, have a meal. So people used to, and I remember doing it with Eleanor, with my wife, who is of Moroccan descent, when we used to go right after Pesach on that night, tomorrow night, and skip from one home to the other, and the doors are open, and you visit, and you sit next to other people, and you just have a meal and have a drink, and you move on to the next home. And there is great joy in the air. And there is also a political dimension to it. There are many political shows of strength when you go to different celebration of political activists, whether it's Likud or Labor or anybody else. And this year, all hushed. Can you imagine when people are not going to be able to go out because the Israeli government instituted specific regulation for this holiday that does not allow people to leave their homes 100 yards beyond their home. They cannot move beyond. In addition, all public transport is off until Thursday, and Israelis can't even travel in between the cities, even for essential goods, because the Israeli government is very wary of spreading the disease. And they know the potential of people trying to escape and going to celebrate the Mimuna, or doing a community get-together, or just going to the nearest bakery to get some chametz after Passover. So they even instituted an order to close down those bakeries for the night. So there is a great sense of we have to adhere to this at this point in time in order for this to pass. However, very interesting point that happened in Israel when you talk about personal example. 3 people who failed. in showing such example to the people of Israel. One was the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who decided to have the Seder with his son, Avner, even though the Israeli citizenry was told not to come together for the Seder night. His son did come to his house to do the Seder. Israel's president, Reuven Ruvi Rivlin, did the same. He went over and had his family over for the Seder, for which he apologized profusely and even sent out a notice now telling the people of Israel, I have no intention of doing it again. I'm sorry. You were upset with me, and that's understood. And that's very much President Rivlin's approach. He mentioned that after the passing of his wife, Nechama, he needed more help in the house, but he understands the criticism. And the third party to that party was Avigdor Lieberman, who also celebrated with his family. And they all came under heavy criticism as a result, because the entire Israeli population is meant to go through and withstand certain rules and regulations. And I'll add one more element to this. These regulations for the second holiday of Passover apply only to towns and cities where there is a Jewish majority. It does not apply in the same way where you don't have such a Jewish majority, in order to respect the Arab population as well. They have no special emphasis for Passover. There is no urge to go to the bakery tomorrow night. So there is kind of a different glove used in this regard. But we're all coping, Mark.
Believe that death total has been kept relatively low in Israel.
Yes, relatively low.
That's a good sign. Although I want you to speak about one person who
you have about 122 people who died in Israel.
Again, relatively few.
Yes,
relatively
that's
to population's Israel size.
Very good.
But there was a very distinguished former chief rabbi who passed away, Bakshi Doron. Would you please speak about him for a moment?
Yes, for sure. Rabbi Eliyahu Bakshi Doron was one of the leading chachams, the leading rabbi in the Sephardic community, Orthodox community in Israel. He was one of the special political leaders behind the scenes for the Shas movement. He was chief rabbi alongside Rabbi Lau, Israel Meir Lau, between 1993 and 2003. What's very interesting about Bakshi Doron of blessed memory, and this shines a light onto many aspects of the Sephardic ultra-Orthodox religious communities and their leadership in Israel, was the relative moderation. It's interesting to note that Bakshi Doron was one of the people who, during the time he was chief rabbi, supported the notion of civil marriage in order to fight the notion of religious coercion. He said you shouldn't call it marriage, you shouldn't call it a union or call it friendship, whatever it is. He made an attempt to make things a bit easier in the realms of halacha, to cope with current living conditions, to maintain the love of people to the Jewish tradition, to steer away from the notion of I'll force your arm and twist it, which has only proven to take people far away from who we are as Jews. He also made significant moves to deal with issues of agunot, the divorce issues, when a husband wouldn't allow a divorce to his wife, and how to cope with it and how to coerce the husband to do the right thing. He even played a part, and this is another interesting element, in politics, and I'm talking about international politics. 1993 to 2003 were hectic years in the political arena. If you remember the Rabin government, the Oslo Accords, a lot of back and forth between Israel and the Arab world, and at the time, Foreign Minister Shimon Peres sent Rabbi Bakshi Doron of blessed memory to various political diplomatic missions, including meeting with Arab leaders, famously meeting with Hosni Mubarak when he was unwilling to meet with Israeli leaders, as a religious leader who also comes from a Sephardic tradition that is a bit more conversant with the Arab culture around Israel. So in doing so, it's interesting to note the role of these Sephardic rabbis who can be a bridge within Israeli society, moderation to extremism, could be a bridge between Israeli society and diaspora Jewry, especially when come time of religious backlash and butting heads on various issues, and even a political bridge between Israel and its neighboring countries. And I think sometimes we here miss that because we view all of the black hats as one. and we don't differentiate the different people within that community to understand the strength. We think that, necessarily everybody who is Shas cannot be attuned to the needs of Reform Jewry or conservative Jewry or the general community or the secular community in Israel. And that is not necessarily true. Sometimes it is, but it's not necessarily true.
That's so helpful for us to understand. Most of us did not know who Rabbi Bakshi Doron was.
Right.
By the way, he got COVID. He passed away at Shahar Azani Hospital at the age of 79. And as you say, it's a real loss. Yes, Shahar?
He was a very humble, he had a very humble human being. He had humility all around him. He used to walk to his office, keep quiet. Rabbi Lau was asked, they asked him, they said, "You're so famous, Rabbi Lau. Everybody knows you. But you served alongside Bakshi Doron, and he is not as well known as you are." He said, "Well, he is well known," Rabbi Lau said, where it really matters. For anybody who knew Rabbi Bakshi Doron of blessed memory, knew a man of great love and passion for the people of Israel and for the great Jewish people, not only in Israel, but around the world. And I think that means a lot. And to that, we have our saying of Chaval al de'avdin velo mishtakhin. It's sad for those who have gone away from us and we cannot remove their memory from our hearts.
By the way, by any chance, did you ever meet him?
No, I never did, only of him. I remember his image of those meetings with Mubarak in the course of the 90s and thinking to myself, what is the role of religious leaders in times of international politics? And how does that work? And that fascinated me and acquainted me with the infinite possibilities that exist out there as far as those international interactions.
All right, there's one more aspect of COVID that I'd like you to speak to, and it has to do with an initiative that was developed by the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs in Israel. Explain to our audience what that's about.
Well, we have unfortunately and tragically seen a significant impact of COVID-19 onto the Jewish community in Israel, but around the world. You've seen a lot of Jewish communities significantly affected, whether it's here in New York. Even yesterday, we heard the news about the Netherlands, where an old people's home, a Jewish old people's home, was struck by the corona with a result of 22 people dead in that old people's home. So this really impacted the world, but it impacted the Jewish world significantly. And Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs decided to launch an initiative. I mean, think about the frustration, Mark. Did you think that Steve Jobs, did he ever have that in mind, that FaceTime and iPhone would be tools of bereavement? Would be tools of coming together, of accompanying somebody in their last moments, as they're being put to rest and the family can't even be there? It is mind-boggling. It's unbelievable to think about the service that he was able to provide by using this tool to humanity. And in this time and age, even Bakshi Doron of blessed memory, somebody of that stature, his funeral was, a few people who were able to come together because of COVID-19. So what can we do together globally as a Jewish people? That initiative, which is a wonderful initiative, is a website which is an online memory where you can light an online candle and put up a photo and the name of that individual who passed away as a result of COVID-19. And remember together. Remember online, where at any given moment we can access that page and look at the different names and remember them and utter their names one more time and read about them and look them in the eye and remember the one thing that means the most to all of us, that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all one big family, whether we are in Jerusalem or Brooklyn, whether we are in the Netherlands or Hungary, we are all one big Jewish people in glory and in pain.
Amen v'amen. Incidentally, a lot of criticism has been directed at pockets of the Orthodox community, including the Orthodox community in Israel. There was a terrible surge of coronavirus in Bnei Brak, and Jerusalem has the highest concentration of corona-infected people in all.
And the second is Bnei Brak.
I'm sorry?
And the second is Bnei Brak.
Yes. But anyway, there's been criticism, as you know, leveled against the Orthodox community And have you heard anything about it in terms of how Israel is
Absolutely.
coping?
Absolutely. Well, the criticism has been uttered against the ultra-Orthodox community whenever and wherever it reads, or the regulation outside of Israel, even within Israel. And that criticism, Mark, came many a time from ultra-Orthodox leaders, from members of the ultra-Orthodox media who lashed out against their own communities, who told them that if there was a one visible spectacle a few days ago, where we saw a car going through the neighborhoods of Jerusalem, the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of Jerusalem, and these ultra-Orthodox people were calling out on the speakerphone and mentioning, if you leave your house, you are a murderer. You are an enemy of Israel and an enemy of the Almighty. And that was uttered because a lot of these people don't have online access, don't have internet, don't have TVs, don't have radios. So you have to reach out to them in their own means of communication. And sometimes it means moving around the streets with a loudspeaker and making sure they get the message. But you're absolutely correct. And right now there is even a specific decision made by the Israeli government to put a specific curfew on some of these neighborhoods where the level of infection has risen beyond 25%.
Yes. So Shahar, we're almost at Yom HaShoah.
Right.
Yom HaShoah has been commemorated in Israel with this very powerful moment. I hope most American Jews know about it. I want you to comment on what's going to happen in Israel this Yom HaShoah, contrasting it with the normal practice that you've lived and that has, that touches the hearts of not only every Israeli, any American Jew, any Jew around the globe who understands what Israel does on Yom HaShoah. I get chills just even mentioning it to you. But talk about the normal practice and what's going to be different this year.
Well, Yom HaShoah normally in Israel is an opportunity for Israelis to wrap ourselves around and all over the Holocaust survivors who are in Israel, to come together and to remember them in a meaningful way that conveys strength and optimism and tremendous amounts of love, to show them that their sacrifice was the fact that they were able to live to this point where there is a strong, successful Israel, to see the grandkids who are flying up in the air as part of the Israeli Air Force, looking down at the grandparents who have the numbers tattooed on their arm, gives me the chills even as we speak now, Mark, even as we speak now. Yeah. And on that moment where we all take the time to remember, to look through the pictures, to watch the shows on TV, to take part in the ceremonies all over Israel, and even take part in a specific initiative that has taken place in Israel in the last few years called Remembering in the Living Room, where not only do you come in touch with these Holocaust survivors on TV, or you watching the documentaries, or watching online testimonials or Schindler's List, but also having a survivor come to your house and bringing 10, 20 people around to listen to their story and give them strength and hold arms around them and just share that pain and that part of our history. And this year, none of it can happen because...
By the way,
yeah.
Also, I want you to mention the practice of the siren.
Right, the 2-minute
time. Israelis throughout the land. Right. And I know you've experienced it personally yourself. Talk about the siren for a moment.
I mean, those two minutes where you have it in the evening, on the evening of, which is next week, and on the day of in the morning. 2 minutes where the entire state of Israel stands still. If you're driving, you stop the car in the middle of the highway, you open the door, you stand outside of the car, you bow your head, and for 2 long minutes, as the siren wails from north to south and east to west, the people of Israel remember and come together with our fallen brothers and sisters of the Holocaust, and with our minds and hearts attuned to those who are still alive amongst us, and to be there for them. And this is
that's such a powerful symbol.
Very powerful.
I don't remember the year at which it was initiated, and I'm wondering, do you remember? Were you a child? Were you a grown-up already?
It was.
When did it start for you?
Throughout my life.
So even as a child?
Yeah, throughout my life. This has been This has been one of the most meaningful experiences I miss as an Israeli who doesn't reside in Israel.
Okay.
And think about those moments.
All right. This year, Israelis are not outside. What's supposed to happen?
Well, first of all, think about the plight of Holocaust survivors, many of whom, regardless, already live alone. And the loneliness, they have a club, it's called Amcha, your people. And they usually go to that club, and a car will come to pick them up, and they will meet with some of their friends, and volunteers will come and be with them. And they've been alone for a few weeks now during the curfews and shutdowns in Israel because of COVID-19. And in addition to that plight, the ceremonies themselves cannot take place with audience, cannot host Holocaust survivors, cannot host families. You can't bring Holocaust survivors to your living room and arrange gatherings of dozens of people to listen to their stories. But what do? You adjust. You humanly adjust. You Jewishly adjust. As an Israeli, you adjust. So the ceremonies will take place. They will be aired on Israel's national television. And there will be very limited audience of high public officials, and that is it, where the rest of Israel will come together on the screens. Even the meetings in the living room has been adjusted so that people can come together on Zoom. And the Holocaust survivors will be on Zoom, and people will come together on Zoom. And even though they can't be there to feel the love, they will still feel the love online. And groups of volunteers are going through, young volunteers are going to take care of these Holocaust survivors at home in the sense of getting their shopping for them and getting their medication if they need and assisting them with anything else that might be required. And the 2 minutes of silence will take place. And in addition, there is another initiative. Because of that digital distance, Israelis will come together during the Holocaust Remembrance Day for 2 minutes to come together on the balcony and clap in honor of all of those Holocaust victims and Holocaust survivors. And as the earth and the land of Israel will be filled not only with deafening silence of 2 minutes, but tremendous clapping that will remind everyone who we are and what we stand for, and will go into the heart, deep into the heart of all of the Holocaust survivors who, sitting in their home, their eyes will swell with tears as they are surrounded with the love of their brothers and sisters in an independent and strong state of Israel.
Yes. That, by the way, to me, is going to be another extraordinary moment. The idea that because Israelis can't be outside and stand at attention for 2 minutes, they're all going to go out on the balcony, and they're going to make as much noise, clapping, cheering, in essence, as you say, for the survival of the survivor. Right. The survival of the survivor who now not only lives in Israel, but has helped create the state of Israel. It's very, very beautiful. And
if there is something we know how to do as Israelis is make noise.
Okay. All right. So now, last time we spoke about the movement towards a coalition government, it looked like Netanyahu and Gantz were going to make a deal. Here we are. It's basically a week plus later. And Shahar, we're not there yet. Describe where we are, but more important, you have been telling us you expect, you can't promise, but you expect that there will be a unity government, which means in some way, Likud and blue and white, because as you pointed out last time, Benny Gantz has kept the party name blue and white, even though it only he was blue and Lapid was white. He's now blue and white all by himself. But you expected blue and white and Likud to make a deal. In some way, Netanyahu had, again, prevailed. He was going to be prime minister for a period of time. And then there was a date when he would depart and Gantz would become prime minister. We thought that was going to happen imminently the last time we spoke. What's happened up till now, and why has it not happened yet?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you, Mark, I am the eternal optimist. And even now, I will tell you that I still believe, contrary to what other people may say or believe, it's never going to happen. Bibi wants to be prime minister forever. I still think that Israel will go in the direction of a national unity government. We know that, let's talk about 2 elements. One, there has been significant discussions between the parties about the minutiae and many details of what that kind of partnership look like, including the sticking point that has delayed the negotiations up to this very minute of how to reshape the Israeli judicial system and how should justices be elected for office in Israel. There is currently a committee of 9 people that appoints justices in Israel. The right-wing bloc and the Likud and Netanyahu, they want a reform in that system. Benny Gantz and Blue and White are adamant to maintain the independence of the judicial system. Is it an innocent desire for a reform in the judicial system? Does it have anything to do with somebody's indictments? Maybe, maybe not. There is a legitimate discussion within Israeli society. But I'll tell you more. In Netanyahu's nature, and looking into as a politician and as a prime minister, there has always been political brinkmanship. There has always been last-minute agreements. They always have to reach the very last 20 seconds of the very last hour of the very last day to reach any kind of agreement. I don't think it's necessarily different at this point, where Gantz's mandate given to him by President Ruvi Rivlin expired last night. And when he came to the president and said, please extend it, Rivlin said, I will. But only if it comes from you and Mr. Netanyahu. So 20 minutes before the expiration of the mandate, the request comes on behalf of both of them to give Gantz the mandate for an additional 2 days, by the way, until tomorrow night. So it was done last night, so that they get a chance to establish a government, a national unity government. Now, there are several layers to the considerations here. President Rivlin said that if Gantz does not have the mandate, then Netanyahu is not going to be given the chance. Why? Because you have to have 61 members of Knesset to support you in order for the president to give you those keys. Netanyahu currently has 58 plus 1. If you remember that name when we were still in studio and spoke about Orly Levy from Gesher, who announced that she would be recommending Benjamin Netanyahu. So she's the 59th. He doesn't have 61. If you go into the political quagmire, I'll mention the 2 members of Knesset who left Lapid and Ya'alon, Tzvika Hauser and Yoaz Hendel, who were the deciding vote against the minority-led government, minority-supported government with the joint Arab list. And I'm not saying that there wasn't any maneuvers from the right-wing bloc to come to them and say, come on, join us, and together we can be 61. But they outrightly said that they will never support a narrow government. They will only support a national unity government. They could have been the 61 votes that Netanyahu needed. So what are the options?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. If they were saying, we will only join a unity government.
Right.
And that's where we were headed.
Right.
Why didn't they stay with that? And why
they are. They're still with it.
Then Netanyahu does have 61.
Netanyahu doesn't, because he will only... the difference is this. If Netanyahu goes to national unity, he has 73. If Netanyahu goes narrow, he has 59. Because these two members of Knesset are not joining Netanyahu's coalition as a narrow government. They're only joining him as part of a national unity with Benny Gantz.
Okay. And have they committed to that?
Yes. They committed in writing to not joining Netanyahu alone. They will only join both of them.
Okay. But then who's holding this up?
Netanyahu.
Why?
Because there are sticking points in what I mentioned on the legal issues that Netanyahu would like to see reformed, and Benny Gantz is not interested in seeing these reforms, and therefore, until they reach a compromise about how to handle the judicial system, you will not see a government.
Okay, and this is really all about Netanyahu trying to create a context for him that will protect him against some kind of legal action being taken in a formal way? I will tell you that there must be some of it there, but I don't think all of it is there. There is some legitimate criticism on the right wing, regardless of Netanyahu for a minute, about over-activism of the Israeli Supreme Court, about certain behaviors, about certain political inclinations of the court. So it's not only that, but it's also that. But is it worth holding up the possibility of a unity government?
Well, that's a big question. So is it really? I will tell you no, because Israel is in times of great crisis, COVID and beyond, and we need that kind of national unity. We don't have the money to go for a fourth round, which will happen in July. If there is no agreement, the expected date of the elections is July 28th. That is not something that Israel should do. However, if I'm a political advisor whispering in Netanyahu's ears, and I think to myself, hey, let's play devil's advocate for a minute. There is no blue and white anymore. Lapid and Ya'alon parted ways from Gabi Ashkenazi and Benny Gantz. So I have been able to destroy the opposition to my rule. And maybe, just maybe, if I go for a fourth round, I'll get 64 seats in the Knesset, according to the poll published on Channel 12 yesterday. And maybe then I can rule on my own. I don't think that this line will win with Netanyahu, just for the mere reason that Netanyahu faces difficulties regardless of the coalition. Like you mentioned, Mark, the legal difficulties of managing his trial, and the outstanding petition to the Israeli Supreme Court that says that an indicted prime minister should not and cannot be given the mandate to establish a government. So Netanyahu understands that there is a chance the Israeli Supreme Court will announce that he cannot preside as prime minister due to the indictments, regardless of Benny Gantz. So I think these considerations play a part. And Netanyahu is being given a deal. He's being given a deal now to be a proper, legitimate prime minister for another year and a half, and then respectfully step off the stage. I think that this is the direction he will choose. And I'll tell you what I always say. They say you have to be cautious. Nobody can predict. Of course we can predict. But where is the fun if we can't throw our hat in the ring? And the biggest gift would be to meticulously explain why you're absolutely right in your analysis, and then later on explain why you got it right to begin with, even though it's wrong.
Okay. So again, for you believe that ultimately Netanyahu is going to come around and Gantz is ready, and we will see unity government very quickly. You said Netanyahu can't go to Rivlin because he doesn't have 61. Gantz doesn't have 61.
Gantz had 61 people who recommended him.
Is this because the Arab League, Arab list went with him?
Yes. So they recommended. So he already has those keys. If he gives it back to the president, it's going to the Knesset. And the Knesset has 21 days to find anyone. It's like an open competition. Any one of you who can get 61 signatures can be the head of the classroom. And these usually expire.
What chance is there that would happen? That in the Knesset, somebody, not Gantz, not Netanyahu, someone else would emerge with 61 seats. Is there any chance of that?
Well, slim, but we've seen surprises in Israeli politics. If Netanyahu doesn't go in the direction of national unity and it goes to the Knesset, just imagine that Lapid and Ya'alon come to Benny Gantz and say, Benny, we tried. You tried. You didn't want to go to a government supported by the Joint Arab List. You said you prefer national unity. You put your prestige on the line. You took a humongous political risk. You gave Netanyahu a chance. You failed. Now I'm asking you, instead of taking Israel to a fourth round that's going to cost us billions that we don't have, come to us and let's together have a minority government supported by the Joint Arab List. Is that impossible? I'm not sure. And I think Netanyahu is not sure as well.
Okay. Again, as we close, your instinct is, in the next what? We're going to end up with a unity government.
You're going to have to have it in the next 2 days.
Next 2 days.
Next 2 days. That's the deadline given by the president.
You're a gutsy guy, Shahar. Shahar, you know how wonderful it is to be able to present you to the JB, that you're part of this now. You're hosting your own shows. You're articulate. You're passionate. You're exciting. You're fun. You're a gift to us, Shahar. And I thank you so much. I wish you and your family now just kol tuva hatzlacha, and you stay safe and be well. And you and I talk every day, and we'll have you back on the air very, very shortly. Thank you, Shahar, very, very much.
Chag Sameach. Thank you, Mark.
And that was my conversation with Shahar Azani. Always a joy, isn't he? A treasure trove of information. So here are the rough coronavirus numbers as of today, April 14th. And again, I'll remind you that we are a family. We are with you during this terrible time. I'm with you always. JBS is with you always. And if you're unable to celebrate a simcha in a synagogue setting, a birthday, anniversary, accomplishment, or if there's someone who's ill, whose name you'd like to include in a Misha Berach list, or if there's someone who's passed away, whom you'd like to hear mentioned, please email that information to me. I'll be happy to read it. I'll be happy to read names on JBS. Simply send your information to jbscommunity@jbstv.org. That's jbscommunity@jbstv.org. And to answer many of your requests about obtaining a DVD of our JBS Family Seder, we are happy to send a DVD to anyone who can support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $180 or more. And for $250 or more, we'll include Rabbi Mark Schneier's traditional Seder. Tax-deductible checks made out to JBS should be mailed to our Stamford, Connecticut address, P.O. Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can donate online with credit card or PayPal by visiting the JBS website at jbstv.org and clicking on the Donate button. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. And any support you can give JBS in these difficult times will be especially helpful and most appreciated. And finally, if you'd like to be in touch with me personally, my email address is easy to remember, rabbigolub@jbstv.org. rabbigolub@jbstv.org. I love hearing from you, and I'll try to respond to as many of you as I possibly can. And so until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Stay safe and be well, my friends.